The stars stretched endlessly in all directions, cold and distant. Among them floated thousands of asteroids, gray and lifeless, covered in thick layers of cosmic dust. Most species in the galaxy ignored these places. There was nothing valuable here, no precious metals, no rare elements, just rock and dust that had been drifting through space for millions of years. But humans were different. Dr. Emily Brooks stood at the observation window of Station Dust 7, watching the asteroid field stretch out before her. The station was built into one of the larger rocks, its metal corridors carved deep into stone that nobody else wanted. Outside, small mining ships moved slowly between the asteroids, their lights blinking in the darkness. Emily had been working here for 3 years now. Her laboratory was filled with microscopes, analysis equipment, and countless samples of dust collected from the asteroids around them. To most people it looked like she was studying dirt. But Emily knew better. "Dr. Brooks, you need to see this," Thomas Reed called from across the lab. He was her chief engineer, a practical man who had helped build most of the equipment they used. Emily walked over to his station. On the screen she could see a fleet of ships approaching their sector. They were large and powerful, painted in the dark purple colors of the Vraxian Empire. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," Thomas said, pressing a button. A voice filled the laboratory, deep and filled with authority. "Attention human settlements in Sector 7. I am Commander Draxus of the Vraxian Empire. You are occupying space that we require for our expansion. You have 3 planetary cycles to evacuate these asteroids. If you refuse, we will remove you by force. This is your only warning." Emily felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her face calm. They had known this might happen eventually. The Vraxian Empire was one of the oldest powers in the galaxy, and they were used to getting what they wanted. Thomas looked worried. "We're just scientists and miners out here. We don't have military ships. Should we start evacuation procedures?" "No," Emily said quietly. "Let's see what Admiral Carter says." The response from Earth Command came within the hour. Admiral James Carter's face appeared on every screen in the station. He was an older man with gray hair and steady eyes that had seen many battles. "To Commander Draxus and the Vraxian Empire," Carter said calmly. "The territories you are demanding are sovereign human space, legally claimed and settled according to Galactic Federation law. We will not abandon our people or our stations. I strongly suggest you reconsider your position." The transmission ended. Around the station people began talking nervously. Everyone knew what the Vraxians were capable of. Their empire had conquered 12 worlds. Their weapons could destroy entire cities. Their shields could withstand almost any attack. And what did humanity have? A few mining stations on worthless asteroids. Some old ships that were barely armed. The newest species in the Federation still learning how things worked in the galaxy. Emily returned to her microscope. Under the lens she could see the dust particles they had collected. But these weren't ordinary particles anymore. Each tiny speck had been carefully processed, programmed, and prepared. Years of work had gone into this project, hidden away on remote stations where nobody paid attention. Thomas came to stand beside her. "Do you think it will work?" he asked quietly. "It has to," Emily replied. She adjusted the microscope, watching the particles closely. Under certain frequencies of light, they seemed to shimmer slightly, responding to signals that normal dust would ignore. Outside the window, the asteroid field looked peaceful. Dust drifted between the rocks, so common and abundant that nobody ever thought about it. Space was full of dust, particles left over from the formation of planets, debris from ancient collisions, tiny fragments of rock and ice floating forever in the void. Humans had looked at all that dust and seen something nobody else had seen. Not waste. Not emptiness. But opportunity. For 3 years, ships from Earth had been quietly spreading their specially prepared dust throughout human territory. Trillions upon trillions of tiny particles, each one programmed and ready. They looked exactly like normal cosmic dust. Every scan showed them as simple rock fragments. No alien species had noticed anything unusual. Emily watched the Vraxian fleet on the long-range sensors. They were gathering their forces, preparing for what they thought would be an easy victory. The Vraxian Empire had never lost a battle against a weaker species. They expected humanity to either flee or be crushed. But they didn't understand humans yet. Humans were the species that had survived ice ages and predators on their homeworld. The species that had reached their own moon using primitive rockets. The species that never gave up, no matter how impossible things seemed. And now, the Vraxians were about to learn what happened when you underestimated humanity. Emily touched the window glass, looking out at the dust clouds drifting through space. In a few days, maybe less, those clouds would show the galaxy something new. Something that would change warfare forever. She smiled slightly. The Vraxians thought they were attacking a weak target. They had no idea they were flying into a trap made of the most overlooked substance in the universe. The dust was ready. Now they just had to wait. The Vraxian armada emerged from hyperspace like a storm of metal and power. 300 warships, each one larger than any human vessel, filled the space around the asteroid field. Their hulls gleamed with advanced shielding technology that could deflect missiles and energy weapons. Their plasma cannons could melt through solid rock in seconds. Commander Draxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conqueror. Around him, his officers monitored the battle displays, confident and relaxed. This would be over quickly. What forces are the humans deploying? Draxus asked. Scanning now, Commander, his tactical officer replied. After a moment, she looked up with confusion on her face. Sir, they have 23 ships. Most appear to be mining vessels and cargo haulers. Only 5 are actual military frigates, and those are outdated models. Draxus laughed. Several of his bridge crew joined him. This was insulting. Did the humans really think such pathetic ships could stand against the Vraxian Empire? Open a channel, Draxus ordered. Let me speak to whoever commands this joke of a fleet. The communication screen flickered to life. Admiral James Carter appeared, standing calmly on the bridge of a human ship. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. There was no panic, no fear. Just steady professionalism. I am Admiral Carter of the United Human Space Fleet. You are in violation of Federation law, Commander Draxus. Turn your ships around now or face the consequences. Draxus smiled cruelly. Consequences? You have 24 mining ships against my armada. I could destroy your entire fleet without losing a single vessel. This is your final chance. Surrender or be destroyed. Carter's expression didn't change. We warned you. What happens next is your choice. The transmission ended. Draxus shook his head in disbelief. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Perhaps both. All ships, advance, Draxus commanded. Target their stations first. Show them what happens when they defy the Vraxian Empire. The massive fleet began moving forward, weapons powering up. Targeting computers locked onto the human mining stations scattered throughout the asteroid field. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Carter watched the Vraxian ships approach. Beside him, Captain Rachel Foster monitored the tactical display with sharp eyes. They're in position, sir, she said quietly. Carter nodded. All mining vessels begin dust dispersal. Protocol 7. Across the asteroid field, the human ships suddenly changed their behavior. Instead of fleeing or fighting, they began releasing massive clouds of gray dust from their cargo holds. The particles spread out quickly, forming enormous clouds that drifted toward the Vraxian fleet. On the Eternal Conqueror, the tactical officer stared at her screens in confusion. Commander, the human ships are releasing some kind of particulate matter into space. Draxus looked at the display. Clouds of dust were spreading through the battlefield, moving slowly toward his fleet. He started laughing again, harder this time. They're throwing dust at us? Is this some kind of primitive smoke screen? He looked around at his crew. These humans are even more backward than we thought. Continue the advance. A little dust won't stop Vraxian shields. The fleet pressed forward. Within minutes, the first ships made contact with the dust clouds. The particles began settling on their hulls, sticking to the shield generators and weapon arrays. Millions of tiny gray specks, each one smaller than a grain of sand. The Vraxian sensors scanned the dust automatically. The results showed exactly what was expected. Simple cosmic debris. Silicon, carbon, trace metals. Nothing unusual. Nothing dangerous. All clear, Commander, the science officer reported. It's just ordinary space dust. No biological agents, no chemical weapons, no radioactive materials. Draxus relaxed. For a moment he had wondered if the humans had some trick. But no, they were simply desperate, trying anything they could think of. Pathetic. Target the nearest station. Prepare to fire, Draxus ordered. But then something strange happened. On one of the forward ships, a warning light began flashing. Then another. And another. Commander, the Relentless is reporting sensor malfunctions, an officer called out. The destroyer reports navigation errors, another added. The Vengeance says their weapons targeting system is offline. Draxus frowned. What's causing this? Before anyone could answer, the lights on the bridge of the Eternal Conqueror flickered. Several console displays showed static for a moment before returning to normal. Captain Foster smiled on the defiance. She pressed a button on her console and spoke clearly. Dust swarm is now active, Admiral. Carter nodded slowly. Let's show them what human engineering can do. Throughout the Vraxian fleet, the dust began to change. Each microscopic particle was actually a programmable nanomachine, designed to look exactly like ordinary cosmic debris. Trillions of them covered the Vraxian ships now, and they were all receiving the same command. Activate. The nanites began their work. Some burrowed into hull plating, breaking apart the molecular bonds that held the metal together. Others invaded sensor arrays, disrupting the electrical signals. Still others found their way into shield generators, causing feedback loops and power surges. On the Eternal Conqueror, alarms began screaming. Draxus grabbed his command chair as the ship shuddered violently. Report, he shouted. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Shield generators failing. Weapons offline. Navigation systems compromised. Similar reports flooded in from every ship in the fleet. The proud Vraxian armada, which had seemed invincible moments before, was falling apart. And the human ships just watched, safe in the distance, as their invisible army of dust did its work. Commander Draxus stumbled as another explosion rocked the Eternal Conqueror. Sparks flew from control panels around the bridge. Officers shouted reports of damage from every section of the massive ship. Emergency power to shields. Draxus commanded, but nothing happened. The shield generators were completely dead. On his main screen he could see the rest of his fleet. Ship after ship was drifting helplessly in space. Some had visible hull breaches where metal had simply fallen apart. Others spun slowly, their navigation systems destroyed. A few were completely dark, their power cores shut down. What is happening? Draxus demanded. Run a full diagnostic. Find out what's attacking us. His science officer worked frantically at her console. Sir, I don't understand. The sensors show the same dust particles on our hull, but now they're moving. They're burrowing into our systems. But that's impossible. Dust can't move on its own. Show me, Draxus growled. The screen displayed a magnified view of the ship's outer hull. Draxus watched in horror as tiny gray particles crawled across the metal surface like insects. They worked together in groups, breaking down the hull plating molecule by molecule. As he watched, a small section of armor simply crumbled into powder. Those aren't dust particles, the science officer whispered. They're machines. Millions of them. Maybe billions. 2 years earlier, Emily Brooks had stood in a meeting room on Earth. Around the table sat military commanders and government officials. On the screen behind her was a microscopic image of a single dust particle. This is what we call a nanomachine, Emily explained. It's smaller than a grain of sand, but it contains a processor, power source and basic tools. One nanite can't do much. But 1 trillion of them working together can do almost anything. Admiral Carter had leaned forward with interest. How small are they exactly? About 1 micrometer across. The same size as cosmic dust particles. We've programmed them to look identical to natural space debris. Any scan will show them as ordinary silicon and carbon compounds. What can they do? Carter asked. Emily pressed a button. The screen showed a piece of metal being slowly dissolved. They can break down almost any material at the molecular level. They can disable electronics by disrupting electrical pathways. They can reconfigure themselves into different shapes for different tasks. And most importantly, they can communicate with each other and follow complex instructions. A general spoke up. How do we deploy them? That's the beautiful part, Emily smiled. We just release them into space like any other dust. They drift naturally, powered by solar energy. They can remain dormant for years, completely undetectable. Then, when we send the activation signal, they wake up and execute their programming. Thomas Reed added his own explanation. We've been testing them in the asteroid fields for months. We can seed entire regions of space with these nanites. Any ship passing through will collect them naturally, just like they collect any other dust in space. The enemy won't even know they're there until we activate them. Now, in the present, those same nanites were tearing apart the Vraxian fleet. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Carter watched the destruction with a grim expression. He took no pleasure in this, but the Vraxians had forced his hand. Target their flagship directly, Carter ordered. Show them what the swarm can really do. Captain Foster sent the command. Throughout the dust cloud surrounding the Eternal Conqueror, billions of nanites received new instructions. They stopped their random destruction and focused on specific systems. Draxus watched helplessly as his weapon systems completely shut down. The massive plasma cannons that could destroy planets went dark. The missile tubes sealed themselves shut as nanites clogged the firing mechanisms. Communication systems failing, an officer reported. They're eating through our transmitter array. Life support is compromised on multiple decks. Engine core temperature rising. The nanites are interfering with the cooling system. Draxus fell into his command chair. His mighty flagship, pride of the Vraxian Empire, was being devoured by dust. Invisible, microscopic enemies that he couldn't fight, couldn't shoot, couldn't escape. A communication channel forced itself open on his screen. Admiral Carter appeared, his expression serious but not cruel. Commander Draxus, your fleet is defeated. The nanite swarm is currently set to disable your ships, not destroy them. Your crews are safe for now. But if you don't surrender immediately, I will change their programming. They will tear your ships apart completely, piece by piece, until nothing remains but debris. Draxus looked around his ruined bridge. Emergency lights flickered. Smoke filled the air. His officers looked at him with fear and desperation. How long do we have? Draxus asked quietly, all his arrogance gone. 5 minutes, Carter replied. After that, I can't guarantee I can stop the swarm. These machines are very good at their job. Another explosion shook the ship. Draxus could hear the hull groaning as structural supports weakened. The nanites were everywhere now, in every system, every circuit, every piece of metal. He had no choice. His empire had sent 300 ships to crush a weak enemy. Instead, that enemy had turned the emptiness of space itself into a weapon. They had weaponized the most common, most overlooked substance in the universe. I surrender, Draxus said, his voice barely a whisper. Tell your machines to stop. Please. Carter nodded slowly. Stand down all weapons. Order your fleet to power down engines. Any ship that tries to escape will be destroyed. Captain Foster sent another signal. Throughout the Vraxian fleet, the nanites stopped their attack. They remained in place, coating every surface, ready to resume if needed. But for now the destruction paused. The mighty Vraxian armada floated helpless in space, held prisoner by enemies too small to see. And in the distance, the human mining ships continued their work, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. News of the Vraxian defeat spread across the galaxy within hours. The impossible had happened. A young species with outdated ships had destroyed the most powerful fleet in the Empire without firing a single shot. And they had done it with dust. The Galactic Federation Council chamber filled quickly. Representatives from 40 different species gathered in the massive circular room on the neutral world of Concordia. The air buzzed with worried conversations in dozens of languages. Ambassador Helen Price sat in the human delegation area, watching the other species talk nervously among themselves. She had been a diplomat for 20 years, but she had never seen the council so frightened. The council leader, a tall being from the ancient Meridian Collective, called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber. We are here to discuss the human weapon known as programmable nanites. The weapon they call dust. A representative from the Corthan assembly stood immediately. He was a large creature with gray skin and 4 arms. The humans have violated every principle of civilized warfare. They have created an invisible weapon that can be anywhere, that cannot be detected or defended against. This technology must be banned immediately. Voices rose in agreement. Many species were clearly terrified. If humans could turn dust into weapons, what else could they weaponize? Air? Water? Light itself? Another representative stood, from a species called the Thalans. How do we know the humans haven't already seeded our worlds with these machines? They could be in our cities right now, watching us, waiting for orders to attack. The chamber erupted into chaos. Species accused each other. Some demanded humanity be expelled from the Federation. Others called for military action against Earth. Ambassador Price stood and waited for silence. When the noise finally died down, she spoke clearly. The Federation asked US to send an expert to explain the technology. Dr. Emily Brooks, the lead scientist of the nanite program, is here to testify. Emily walked to the center of the chamber. She felt hundreds of alien eyes watching her. Some looked angry. Some looked afraid. She took a deep breath and began. I understand your fear, Emily said. But you need to understand why we created this technology. Humanity is new to the galaxy. We don't have ancient shield technology or powerful plasma weapons. When the Vraxians threatened our people, we had to find another way to defend ourselves. By creating nightmare weapons, the Corthan representative shouted. No, Emily replied calmly. By using what we had. Space is full of dust. It's everywhere, in every system, around every planet. Most species ignore it because it seems worthless. But we saw potential. We saw a tool that could be used for many purposes. She activated a holographic display. It showed nanites working together to build a structure. These machines can construct buildings and space stations. They can mine asteroids without explosions or pollution. We've used them to clean up debris fields that were hazards to navigation. Another image appeared showing medical applications. They can deliver medicine to specific cells in a body. They can repair damaged tissue. We've cured diseases with these nanites. A representative from a peaceful species called the Ven spoke up. Her voice was gentle. But they can also be used to destroy, to kill. How can we trust that humans won't use them as weapons again? Emily nodded. That's a fair question. We're willing to share this technology with the Federation. Peaceful applications only under strict oversight. Military uses will be heavily regulated by treaty. We'll teach other species how to detect and disable hostile nanites. And if we refuse? The Corthan representative demanded. Admiral Carter's voice came from the human delegation area. He stood slowly, his military uniform crisp and decorated. Then we keep the technology to ourselves. But understand this, we never wanted to weaponize the nanites. You forced us to when you threatened our people. We prefer cooperation to conflict. Discussions continued for hours. Some species wanted to acquire the technology immediately. Others wanted guarantees that it would never be used against them. The Meridian Collective proposed a treaty called the Dust Accords, which would regulate nanite use across all Federation space. Late that night, after the session ended, Emily returned to her temporary quarters in the diplomatic compound. She was exhausted. Thomas had sent her messages about the technical details other species wanted to know. She sat at her desk, reviewing files, when her security system gave a quiet alert. Someone was trying to bypass the locks on her door. Emily's hand moved to the emergency communicator, but she paused. On her computer screen, she pulled up the security camera feed. 3 figures in dark clothing were working on her door lock. They moved with military precision. Emily recognized the style of their equipment. Corthan. They were trying to steal the nanite programming codes. Emily smiled slightly. She had expected this. Carefully, she reached under her desk and pressed a hidden button. Then she stood and walked calmly to the center of the room. The door slid open. The 3 Corthan agents rushed in, weapons raised. They expected to find Emily sleeping or unprepared. Instead, she stood waiting for them. And around them, the air began to shimmer. Dust particles that had been invisible moments before suddenly became visible. They had been floating throughout the room, dormant and undetectable. Now they activated, responding to Emily's command. The nanites swarmed around the agents, not hurting them but holding them in place. Their weapons fell from hands that couldn't move. They struggled but couldn't break free from billions of microscopic machines working together. I'm a scientist, Emily said quietly. I always think ahead. Security forces arrived within minutes. The Corthan agents were arrested, and their government was forced to issue formal apologies. The attempted theft had one positive effect though. It showed the other species that the nanites could be controlled and used defensively. The next day, the Dust Accords were signed by every member of the Federation. Humanity had turned their greatest weapon into a tool for peace. 6 months after the Corthan theft attempt, the galaxy looked very different. The Dust Accords had been ratified by every member species of the Federation. Humanity's nanite technology was no longer a secret weapon. It was becoming a tool that brought the galaxy together. Emily stood on the observation deck of Concordia Station, watching something remarkable happen in space. Thousands of kilometers away, clouds of nanites were building a new structure. The particles worked together like invisible construction workers, arranging molecules one at a time, building something from nothing. It's beautiful, Thomas said, standing beside her. He had come from Earth to help oversee the construction project. The structure taking shape was the new Federation Peace Center. It would be neutral ground where any species could meet, discuss problems and find solutions without conflict. And it was being built entirely by nanites from 12 different species, all working together under shared programming. The Meridian Collective added their nanites yesterday, Emily said, pointing to a section that glowed faintly blue. And the Ven contributed theirs this morning. Even the Vraxians sent a swarm. Thomas smiled. I never thought I'd see the day when Vraxians would cooperate with us. Neither had Emily. But things had changed dramatically since the battle at the asteroid field. Commander Draxus himself had traveled to Earth to formally apologize for the invasion. His empire had paid reparations and requested human assistance in developing their own nanite programs. Dr. Brooks? A voice called from behind them. Emily turned to see a young Vraxian officer approaching. He wore the uniform of their diplomatic corps and carried a data pad. I'm Lieutenant Varan. Commander Draxus asked me to deliver his report on our nanite development program. He hopes you'll review it. Emily took the data pad. Thank you. How is the commander? Varan's expression was respectful. He speaks of you often, Doctor. He says you taught the Vraxian Empire an important lesson about underestimating others. After Varan left, Emily opened the report. The Vraxians were using nanites to clean up pollution on their industrial worlds and to construct new habitat domes on lifeless moons. They were using them exactly as the Dust Accords required, for peaceful purposes only. Admiral Carter joined them on the observation deck. He looked older now with more gray in his hair, but his eyes were still sharp. The Corthan Assembly just sent word. They want to establish a joint research facility with us. They want to learn how to use nanites for deep space exploration. The same species that tried to steal our technology? Thomas asked. Carter nodded. People change. Governments change. They realized cooperation is better than conflict. Plus, the treaty requires any new nanite applications to be shared across all species. If the Corthans develop something useful, we all benefit. Emily thought about that. 6 months ago, the galaxy had been on the edge of panic. Now, species that had been enemies for centuries were working together. All because of microscopic machines that everyone had ignored. Sir, the Tylon delegation is asking if we can help them with a medical crisis, Captain Rachel Foster said, arriving with another report. She was Carter's second in command now and had been promoted after the battle. They have a plague on one of their colonies. They think targeted nanites might cure it. Send a medical team immediately, Carter ordered. And Dr. Brooks, I'd like you to go with them if possible. Emily nodded. This was what she had always wanted, to use her science to help people, not harm them. The weaponized dust had saved humanity, but peaceful dust could save countless lives across the galaxy. Over the next weeks, Emily traveled to the Tylon colony. The nanites worked perfectly, delivering medicine directly to infected cells. The plague was eliminated within days. The Tylon people threw a celebration in Emily's honor, grateful that the technology that had once terrified them was now saving their children. When she returned to Concordia Station, the Peace Center was nearly complete. The structure gleamed in the starlight, a massive ring of metal and crystal built atom by cooperative nanites from across the galaxy. At the dedication ceremony, representatives from every species gathered. The council leader spoke about unity and cooperation. Ambassador Price gave a speech about finding strength in unexpected places. Even Commander Draxus attended, standing proud in his formal uniform. But it was Emily's speech that people remembered most. When we first developed nanite technology, we didn't set out to create a weapon, she said, her voice carried to millions watching across the galaxy. We just looked at dust, the most common, most overlooked thing in the universe, and asked ourselves a simple question. What if this could be something more? She paused, looking out at all the different species listening. That's what humanity does. We find potential where others see nothing. We turn obstacles into opportunities. We refuse to accept that anything is worthless or impossible. Emily gestured to the Peace Center floating behind her. This station wasn't built by one species. It was built by all of us working together. That's the real lesson here. When we cooperate, when we share knowledge instead of hoarding it, when we look for potential in unexpected places, that's when we accomplish the impossible. The ceremony ended with thousands of nanites creating a light show in space, particles from every species dancing together in perfect harmony. Thomas found Emily afterward. So what's next? What other overlooked thing are you going to revolutionize? Emily smiled, looking up at the stars. I don't know yet. But in a universe this big, full of things everyone takes for granted, I'm sure we'll find something. Admiral Carter raised a glass in toast. To humanity. May we never stop seeing potential where others see nothing. The galaxy had learned an important truth. The most powerful weapons, the most useful tools, the greatest discoveries, sometimes they were hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone creative enough to notice them. And nobody was better at noticing overlooked things than humans.